Now, we've been getting warnings all over the place, and we need to think back and think about why they are warning everyone. I mean, when Obama was president, we're going through this recovery, no warnings. The economy was doing great. It was recovering, and those numbers, those statistical numbers that they manipulate, they weren't that great. Trump comes into the presidency, manipulates the numbers even more using their methods, makes the economy look incredible. Now we have warnings all over the place. The housing market's coming down. The global debt is too high. The interest rates are being raised. And Trump came out and contradicted the Fed. And he did this twice, saying that he thought that Powell was an easy money Fed, not an interest rate Fed. And then the second time said, listen, raising the interest rates right now is not going to help because we have to pay off the debt. This is not going to help the situation. And we know that Trump is going to contradict the Fed again because they just raised their rates. And right on cue, this is exactly what he did. Now, let's think about this. What is the plan here? The entire plan was to delay the collapse of the system. Now, why would he have to delay the collapse? Well, he became president, and he needed to reverse everything. Needed to get rid of TPP, needed to get rid of NAFTA or renegotiate NAFTA because it was very difficult to get rid of because he had to go through Congress. Dismantle the globalist system and start to reorganize everything. Now, how do you delay all of this? Well, you give tax cuts. This will delay the inevitable because it gives disposable income back to the people, allows corporations to continue on, and it gives you this buffer area. But that buffer area will only last a certain period of time, and then the economy will continue in its downward slide. Remember, we've been following the economy for a very long time, and we know what's going to happen. We've seen it time and time again. The Fed raises the rates, and the system implodes. The debt gets too high, you go bankrupt. I mean, it's a very simple thing to understand here. So right now, we are in the delay phase of the economy. Why? Because the plan is to get rid of the globalist system, bring back manufacturing, bring back everything that was taken away. Can we bring back everything? Most likely not. But we can do it to a point where at least the U.S. will be prepared for this transition. And that's where we are right now. And we can see that global liquidity, it's rapidly shrinking right now because each central bank, they are tightening and they're going to start raising rates a little bit. Because the central banks believed and they thought that there was going to be someone else in the White House. And they thought they were going to use an event to cover up their entire crash of the global system. Well, that didn't work out. If you notice, the IMF, the BIS, they're all out there blaming Trump's policy, the trade war between the U.S. and China. And they continually do this. But when you look at the situation, and this is why we've been following the economy for such a long time, we know that the economy was breaking down for a completely different reason. And the purpose of the trade war was not to bring down the economy because of the trade war. It was to set up a system where manufacturing can be brought back to the United States and tariffs, the cost of exporting and importing can be leveled out, where you have an even playing field amongst the countries. Because remember, the globalist system did not help the U.S. That wasn't their plan. Their plan was to make the U.S. a third world nation. That's not happening right now. Now, we know that China, they are in on this. Russia is in on this. And as Trump continually makes these bilateral trade agreements, puts tariffs on China, try to bring as much manufacturing back to the States, reduces regulations, he's going to be doing all of this to bring the companies back to the U.S. This is why he's trying to make all these deals. China they're eventually going to help crash the system. Think about what China has. A huge amount of treasuries. And China has already been saying that, listen, if this continues, we're just going to sell off all our treasuries. What happens if they sell off all their treasuries? Yes, the Fed can purchase them. Yes, maybe pension funds can purchase them. But it's going to be completely disastrous if this happens. But this is not going to happen as of yet, because we know that China has been propping up their system, buying a lot of gold, and creating the petro yuan. And their currency, the Chinese yuan, is tracking gold even closer now than any other currency market. And there's a reason for this. And we know that China, when the time comes, they will dump treasuries. Not by the millions, not by the billions. Most likely $1 trillion. Now, think about what the IMF is doing right now. The IMF is warning that risks are all out there, that we're going to see a second Great Depression. And they're saying these risks are because of China and the United States. And the Fed, as they raise rates, they're hurting the emerging markets. They're going to be hurting the global economy. And this is not going to work out. And they're saying that major economies right now, they have peaked. And we must steer away and must resist self-sufficiency. This is the IMF's message. Now, right on cue, Trump doubled down on his criticism of the Fed. Now, he was traveling to Iowa for a rally and said the Federal Reserve is moving too fast with interest rate increases. He went on to say, I don't like what the Fed is doing. This is what he told White House reporters. I think we don't have to go as fast on rate hikes. I like low interest rates, he said. Already, as soon as the Fed raised interest rates, he's already criticizing the Fed once again. Now, Michael Krieger tweeted out the following. This is exactly why Trump can still win in 2020, even if the economy tanks. He will blame the Fed and his base will eat it up. Actually, this is the plan. This is the entire plan. He's out there criticizing the Fed, building the idea that the Fed is responsible for the economy collapsing. Powell is working with him. What is Powell saying? Powell is saying, listen, I'm going to keep raising interest rates and I don't care about market volatility. I don't care if the economy declines. We are not going to stop. Because the Fed and Trump and the rest of the patriots, they know what happens when you raise rates. Go back in time. They did it every single time, and out of the 13 times, I believe, 12 ended up in a recession. This time isn't any different. This time, they're pushing it to a certain interest rate, and I believe this is going to be around 2.83%. Once it reaches that point, everything starts to fall apart. And Trump had to do something to delay all of this before he got Powell in there, because the system was not doing well whatsoever. Everything was in a bubble. It was going to crash. If nothing was done, the system would have come down. This is why we got an injection of like sugar or a drug, and all of a sudden the economy took off. This is why Trump and the Patriots had to recalculate the GDP and add $1 trillion to it, because he needed to make the economy look incredible. He needed the economy to look like it is doing better than anyone could have imagined. This way, the mainstream media, all the other financial pundits, the other Fed chiefs, the IMF, the biz, all of it couldn't say Trump brought it down, because Trump knew that he was going to have to implement tariffs. Trump knew, and I'm just not saying it's Trump, it's the group of people that are working together, knew that he was going to have to dismantle the globalist system. And while he was doing this, he needed a way for the economy to look incredible. Even though, in the background, if you look through all the illusionary statistical numbers that were manipulated, in the background, the economy is completely dead. It's completely dead. I mean, think about it. We have over $500 billion of interest that we have to pay. And the debt, it's not slowing. It's moving up very, very quickly. This is on purpose. Because when we hit a certain point and they feel comfortable, and I say they, Trump, the patriots, they feel comfortable, we're at a point where the system can come down and blame can be made to the Fed, showing that they're the ones who are responsible for this. That's when it's all going to happen. And this is why the IMF, the biz, the mainstream media, they're all talking about a recession, a depression, because they already knew the economy was weak. They already knew that this was going to happen no matter what. They already knew that this is where we are headed. Now, they're going to try to control the narrative and blame this on Trump. You hear the IMF already. The IMF is already out there saying, well, it's because of the trade wars. It's because of his fiscal policies. This is why everything's starting to break down. And the economies out there have reached a peak, and there's no other way to go except down. The mainstream media is now all of a sudden reporting on how the housing market's not doing well, talking about how retail is not doing that well. Even though their same statistical numbers are showing that this economy is better than ever, they're starting to report on this. So they're trying to build this narrative. It's going to fail, but they're trying to build this narrative. Trump, on the other hand, and the patriots that are working with him, they're building the narrative to go after the Fed, to nationalize the Fed. That's why he has Andrew Jackson once again hanging on the wall in his office. This has been planned out, and it's one step at a time. Remember, we need to cut off the funding to the deep state. Where does the funding come? Well, from a corporation that has no allegiance to a people. That is the Fed. They don't report to the people, we the people. They report to their shareholders, the banks, the elites, the biz, the IMF, not the people of the U.S. So Trump's plan with the patriots is moving forward, just like the plan with the deep state, just like the plan in the Middle East. And think about it. He already gave a warning to Saudi Arabia that you might have to start paying for our protection because we're doing away with the petrodollar system. And when all this stops, every country is going to have to fend for themselves. Unless you want our protection, you can pay for it. But guess what? These countries are not going to do this. So we're getting closer and closer, and right on cue, Trump came out and started to criticize the Fed and Powell. This is part of the plan. We're going to be going through this transition. Get ready, get prepared.